In a previous video, we talked about how to use the end tracking attribute and how do we actually create the attribute and how do we use the attribute for other purposes, for example, extracting faults. Right. Now let's talk about another kind of another type of application of those attributes. We're going to look at how do we do the so-called spectral decomposition, a visualization that allows us to actually to visualize the frequency information together with the seismic data or certain attributes of the seismic data. And it's called a spectral decomposition. The reason that it's called a spectral decomposition is because we're trying to actually visualize the frequency content, right? Basically the actually multiple frequencies. We're trying to visualize multiple frequency information on the same view, right? By using transparency and by using different frequency content. And this kind of spectral decomposition visualization allows us to look at those time slices, with a different view. It allows us to actually discover structural patterns in those time slices more easily. And it can help us not just to understand how to do the interpretation better, but also try to understand the overall structural information for the entire region, which can be useful when we try to construct the petrophysical model for our volume simulations, for our volume calculation, that kind of thing, right? So so let's try to so here is our raw seismic data, right? It's our raw seismic data. So what we will try to do is actually to convert this kind of time slices, into some kind of a composite view that contains frequency information, right? In terms of operation, it's slightly more complicated than before because it's not just a one button click or a few button clicks. You actually have to sort of walk through this entire procedure in like one sequence, and the entire procedure is quite complicated. One of the things that we have to, it's got like multiple steps. In the first step, we need to actually understand what's actually the spectrum of the entire seismic data, right? What's going to be the frequency content of the entire seismic data. And then in the second step, we have to sort of do some kind of a narrow band filtering, right? We need to actually extract the frequency. We need to extract the seismic data at specific frequencies. In fact, we're going to extract the seismic data at 3 different frequencies. And then the extracted data are assigned with different color and a different opacity, right? And then on those time slices, we're going to superpose those different frequency components onto like a one-time slice, that kind of thing. Of course, it depends upon how you actually select the frequency, what the frequency you select, and then the opacity and the color that you are gonna sort of use for the entire procedure, right? So the visualization could look very different, and it takes lots of a trial. It takes lots of a practice to be able to actually come up with the best visualization for the entire region. So let's give it a try. Maybe the result will be good, maybe the result won't be good, but I'll show you what's actually the button clicks, what's actually the sequence of operations that's needed in order to actually do this kind of thing. All right. So for now, we have RMS, amp, inst, phase, these 2 attributes that's extracted, right? And then RMS amp was realized, and tracking volume was realized too, right? the first step is to actually take a look at what's actually the frequency content, right, of our data. So one of the ways is actually to use the inspector and then select the seismic data, and then select the seismic data, and then it's got a spectrum thing. We can sort of look at what's actually the frequency content, right? But this is not so quantity. So if we move our cursor across the spectrum, we will be able to actually look at what's going to be the frequency content, right? So the dominant frequency seems to be at around 15 hertz, right? You still got like quite a significant energy. It goes from like 10 to like 30 hertz, this kind of range, right? That's the dominant frequency, and you still got like plenty of frequency content, plenty of energy that's out to like 40, 50 hertz, that kind of thing. If you don't really know how to actually read the curves, you can sort of put your cursor at the legend, right? At the question mark, it's going to tell you what's actually the meaning of the different traces, right? So the horizontal axis is supposed to be hertz, right? It's actually supposed to be hertz, right? And then the vertical axis is supposed to be the amplitude. It's supposed to be the power, actually. And then the different color, the curves with different color shows different levels of averaging. So for trace, it's red curve, and then for the red curve is the raw trace data, right? And then the blue curve is 9x9 average, right? And then we've got two levels of grayscale, right? The outside grayscale, the darker ones, are for 9x9 maximum, right? It's a kind of a 9x9, so inline and cross line areas and 9 traces by 9 traces, that kind of thing. But it's actually taking that kind of a maximum and a minimum, and then 3x3, the inner sort of shallower gray is 3x3. So you average over the inline and cross line by 3 traces, that kind of thing. And then you take the maximum, minimum, and the average. So it basically shows you the different levels of averaging. So that's one of the ways to look at the frequency content. And there's another way of looking at the frequency content, which is by creating an attribute that's called a dominant frequency. If you click on this volume attributes button, so we have looked at lots of different kinds of attributes already, right? So let's look at another one this time. It's called dominant frequency, right? And then let's just call it. Let's give the output dominant. Freak. And then parameters 33. Yeah, that's good enough again. And then let's click on OK. So now we have a dominant frequency attribute, right? Oh, why do I want to visualize this one? So it looks like the color ranges from like 0 to like 120 hertz, right? So the color scale indicates hertz. But let's right click on it and then open the settings dialog box. And then in terms of operations, click on operations. So for now, it's you don't really see distribution, right? So all the data is like collapsed at this particular boundary. If that's the case, you can click on scan to sort of re-examine the data that you just created. So now you've got a kind of a distribution, right? That shows you how the data points are kind of distributed across different frequencies, right? And you can sort of see the maximum frequency is close to like 40 hertz or something. Another thing that you may want to sort of use, another button that you may want to use is this button, right? Send histogram to the message log. If you click on it, then the message log is gonna sort of record the histogram data, right? So the majority of it, so the horizontal axis is going to be whatever the attribute is. So if it's dominant frequency, then the horizontal axis is going to be the dominant frequency. That's the hertz, right? And then the vertical axis just shows you the number of data points at those different frequencies. And you can sort of see on this particular color legend, right? The dominant frequency is at around 25 hertz, I think, right? And then if you want to examine the message log, let me close this dialog box. For some reason, my computer has freezed. Let me just pause the video here to wait for the computer to come back. So my computer has finished the calculation. So if you look into the message log, you will be able to see the number of data points at very different frequency, right? So for the majority of the high frequencies, that's above like there's very few data points actually. So now you can see some of the data points. So if you would like to actually have a more quantitative understanding about how the data is actually distributed along at different frequencies, you can use this technique to examine the actual numbers, right? But just from that histogram and also from this histogram that we can see that dominant frequency is at around 25 hertz, right? So it's not really a very high frequency data that I'm actually processing here. It's probably, according to today's standards, it's actually a very low frequency, right? It's not really very high frequency. So that's sort of the first step. Right? Your data could have a much better resolution than mine, right? Your data could have a much higher frequency than mine. So for my data, for demonstration purposes, maybe that doesn't really matter too much. But in realistic projects, your data could have a lot higher frequency than mine. So now let's try to sort of extract the different frequencies. Right? Let's try to extract different frequencies. So now I have turned the visualization or the color template for my seismic data, the raw original amplitude data, into this kind of grayscale. Right? The way for changing the color scale, the color template is actually quite simple. All you have to do is to click on the inspector and then just change your cursor to the picker and then select the data. And then here you will be able to actually select the color table, right? So if I click on global and then I can. So for now it's black, gray, white, right? That's one of those grayscale color tables. That's in this particular selection, right? That's actually we have only Petrel actually has only two grayscale color tables inside of the inspector thing. Right, one is called a black gray white, and the other one is white gray black. It's just the opposite. Right, so if you select that, then the color scale is like reversed. But this kind of effect can be achieved just by clicking this button, flick color table. It depends upon your preference. You can just use this one or that one. It doesn't really matter too much for the visualization purposes. But for when you actually try to do interpretation, it might be important because it's going to decide if you are tracking the peak or if you are tracking the trough, that kind of thing. But for visualization purposes, let's just use this kind of grayscale color pattern. And what we are going to do is that we're going to we'll also insert a random line. Because this kind of inline and cross line will not kind of so let me click on inline and see if I can have intersection. Oh, it also allows you to do this kind of thing. Later on, we're going to use this button, but for now, let's still insert a random line. Let me just insert a random line. Insert a random line, yeah. And later on, we can actually move this random line to a proper location, right, by just dragging it. And then after we have found the dominant frequency, which is around 25 hertz, we can start to actually extract the different frequency components. And what we're going to do is that we're going to extract like 3 different frequencies. Of course, which frequency you want to extract depends pretty much upon your application and your data, right? Which frequency you want to look at, right? And which frequency is actually more sensitive, for example, to the structure of the region, to the length scale of the structure in the region, right? And then in order to actually extract those different frequencies, again we have to use this volume attributes button. Now we have to select not the dominant frequency, but yeah, ISO frequency component. Right. ISO frequency component, which means that it's a single frequency. Right? It's a single frequency thing. So the frequency that we want, let's start from the dominant frequency. That's let's say 25 hertz, right? In your application, it doesn't have to be 25 hertz. It can be adjustable. You should actually pick the frequency to your needs, right? It doesn't have to be dominant frequency. It can be any frequency. It can be any frequency content that you want to examine. In fact, it takes lots of experimentation. It takes lots of try and error to find the best frequencies to try to use, right? And then let's just leave the next thing sort of unchanged. 1.5. That looks good enough. And then let's give it a name. Let's give it a name. ISO frequency. ISO freq 25 hertz. Later on, we're going to set the color to red, for example. Right? And then let's click on OK. And now we have a property that's called ISO frequency, right? And it's going to look like that. It's going to look like that. All right. And then let's extract 2 more frequencies, right? So this is the 1 frequency, and then let's extract 2 more. 25 hertz. Let's add 10 hertz to it. 25 hertz at 10, like that's 30 hertz, right? 30 hertz, 35 hertz. 35 hertz. Let's do like 40 hertz. 40 hertz. Let's do 40 hertz. And then input output, let's just the ISO 40 hertz. RGB, right? Let's make it green. Later on we set the color to green. And then let's extract one more. Let's extract one more. RGB. Basically, we need like 3 different frequencies for. This time, let's try something that's lower than 25. 15 hertz. Maybe 10 hertz or something. Yeah, let's try like 10 hertz if it's got enough energy. ISO 10 hertz. And then RGB blue. Let's use blue. Right. Okay. 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 So now we've got like 3 ISO frequency objects or ISO frequency attributes, right? Now let's try to adjust its color. Let's try to adjust its color and also the transparency, the opacity of each of those 3 ISO frequency objects, right? And let's right click and then settings. Because we're gonna work on those 3 different things together, so maybe it's a good idea to actually open all 3 of them. Another settings. So that's 25. That's 40, right? And then we have one more, that's 10 hertz. Okay. So the central frequency, the 25 hertz, is supposed to be red. So let's change the color bar to red. Limits defining color table. What we want is to turn this side to black, then to turn this side to red. We don't really need all the sliders in middle. Just so that's gonna give us just a black to red, right? A black to red gradient. We don't really need the nonlinear gradient thing. Let's just turn it off. And then we need to adjust the opacity. Usually the dominant frequency is 25 hertz, right? So which means that at 25 hertz the seismic energy is like strongest. So maybe let's set the opacity to lower, right? Maybe let's adjust the opacity. Let's make it as lowest, right? It doesn't really matter how large it is. Let's make it the lowest. And then let's try to adjust RG. Let's adjust this green color table. Right. Again, let's set it to black. And then let's try to adjust the opacity. Let's maybe let's make it slightly bigger than this one. Maybe let's move it like here. It doesn't really have to be the values that I'm setting here. You can adjust it and then try to find what's actually the best visualization. Right? You can try different opacity, try different kinds of slope, try different starting value, ending value, that kind of thing. It takes lots of patience to actually find the right visualization. Right? And it also depends upon your data. right? If the data can be sort of visualized very easily, then it won't take too much time, right? You try a few things. If it works, then that's good, right? If it doesn't work, then you will have to try more. And then the last one is blue, right? So let's change it. And then let's make the opacity even higher. Let's still make it give it some kind of pass through. So yeah. This kind of arrangement that I'm showing you here is really arbitrary. It really doesn't actually uh it really doesn't have to be to look like this kind of thing on my look like my what's on my screen. It can be it can be anything. You don't even have to make the opacity look like a straight line. You can make it a curve or something. And that's RGB, right? Anything else that I want to adjust? Yeah, I think that's it. Let's click on OK, OK, and then OK. Right. So um yeah, that's good enough, I guess. So let's maybe let's give it a try. Let's try to display everything on this particular vertical section, right? So let's try to activate this vertical section. Which one is it? It's a random line, right? That's the random line. And then in the intersection, let's try to click on this button, visualize on intersection. And then maybe let's look at the 25 hertz. Right, so does it show anything? Doesn't look very good on this cross section at least. Let's wait until we see the sort of time slice and see what's actually the effect, right? Okay. So usually on the vertical cross section, you want to display the raw data, and then kind of with a color that's kind of mixed with some of the ISO frequencies. But on the time slice, you don't really want to see the raw data. What you want to see is actually either the variance or the coherency. So let's try to create a volume attribute that's either variance or coherency. But do I have coherency here? If you have coherency, it's better to use coherency. Chaos. No, it's not. There's no coherency. And then let's just use variance, right? Let's just use variance. And then let's give a name. Let's call it VAR. Parameters. Let's just accept the default. We can always adjust it later on. Doesn't really matter too much. And then let's click on OK. And now we've got a variance, right? And then let's realize it. Right click and then realize. let's just click on realize without doing much. Don't really want to do any other operations, and it's just so it looks like I have the realization has completed. So now we've got a variance volume, right? We've got a variance volume, and we've got a, so let's turn off this one and then turn off this one, turn on this one. That's going to give us some kind of a variance display, but it looks like it's not coherent enough. I'm change my cursor and then drag this thing down. Open my inspector. Okay, that's variance, right? Oh, because I have realized it. So can I still change the parameters that we used for this thing? Can I still change the? Okay, so maybe for this realized volume, I cannot really change it. But let me go back to this one. Let's see if I can use the inspector to. Yeah, so this after realization, it doesn't allow me to change the look anymore. But suppose I increase it by to 5. Let's look at what's actually the effect. Okay, so that's like too much. Maybe 4. 4. Oh, let's still change it back to 3. And then let's try 10. Or 20. Does that make it look better or worse? It's not any good. Let's still change it back to 15. So it's anyway, it's probably not a good idea to actually change the default parameter here. Let me turn off the visualization of this one and then turn on the visualization of the. All I want is the depth slice, right? And then now let's try to actually visualize those different frequency content on this particular time slice, right? So here I'm visualizing the var, that's the realized volume, right? And then what I want to do is that to actually turn this time slice into a screen, and onto which we can visualize the different attributes. So we have to make sure that this button is clicked, right? As soon as we clicked on this button, we have blue checkboxes in front of these 3 different frequency content. At this point, we might want to just display all the different frequency content. Right. So now it's giving us a view that's with the 3 different frequency content that's all mixed up in this particular way, right? Again, the visualization is not the best, right? It's I haven't actually tried different kind of configurations. In practice, it's going to take a lot of time. In a realistic project, it can take a lot of time to try. to just try different parameters and try different angles. Let me look at the different angle maybe. Let me move this cross section to a better location. Maybe let me try to rotate it. So, but anyway, this put it a little bit away so you can see something. But let's try to shift this horizontal time slice and see if we can find a better view. Maybe we're seeing something. I'm not exactly sure what those things are, but it's got some kind of pattern, right? Again, my cursor operations are not sort of kind of there's a kind of delay. Again, depending upon the data that you're actually trying to visualize and also the parameters that you have selected, your visualization could look very different, right? And the background volume that you want to use is usually just the coherency or variance. But for some reason, my Petrel doesn't really have coherency. Maybe I didn't buy. There's a package that's kind of missing in the purchase, in the license package, or maybe there's something else. I forgot to load or something. But there's definitely some kind of structure. I'm not sure what they are, but it looks like it's kind of a systematic pattern. Maybe my variance is probably not computed with the best set of parameters. Maybe maybe it might be a good idea for me to just let me turn off the visualization first, and then let me try a different variance. Let me go back. I'll just using spectral to adjust my. Let me try to make the. Can I insert a time slice? It's a time slice. Insert time slice. Okay, that's the time slice. What the time slice looks like. So maybe I should try to actually make the coherency pattern more coherent. Make the variance pattern more coherent by doing slightly more averaging. Just change it to 4. Is that going to make it worse or better or worse? Maybe it's going to make it worse, but I don't really know. And then let's re-visualize it. In principle, you don't have to realize it. It's just for the convenience. I'll just realize it. Right. So and then later on we can do some comparisons with the original. Has it finished realizing? Oh, now it has finished. Let me turn off this. So let me put on this one. And also the color table or color scale for the variance can also be adjusted. You don't really have to stick with this particular color table. You can try to change the color table for the variance to a different one also. Intersection. Then maybe I should try to change the bar color. Maybe let's select a different color. It's really difficult to say. It's for this particular data set, spectral decomposition may not exactly tell you too much. Maybe I didn't find the correct parameters. Maybe I didn't find the best parameters. It's really difficult for me to actually find the optimal parameters in such a short amount of time. But in your case, in a realistic project, you want to try. You just want to try different parameters. Okay, maybe there's some kind of river channel here, but I'm not sure. Maybe my understanding is entirely wrong. I really don't know. Maybe something going along in this kind of direction. Again, it also depends upon the data set. In your particular data set, it might be particularly easy to actually identify spatial patterns at different time slices. Right. But this type of visualization is definitely quite useful, and it's kind of a useful tool set, and also useful skill set in terms of the understanding Petrel and also in terms of working on a realistic project, right? Yeah, I think that's pretty much enough for this particular video. And in the next video, we're going to talk about slightly more complicated things.